forest is black, pitch black. I pound over the dirt trail, my feet turning the pedals like twin pistons. The bicycle bounces and jolts, shuddering as it rolls across the wooden bridge. There's something in the air tonight, a chill. But it isn't the chill of autumn. No, this is the chill of unease. It crawls up my spine, carrying the deep-rooted knowledge that something about these woods, something about this trail isn't right. It's the unmistakable dread of being watched, pursued. I stand up and ride harder. My lungs burn with every push of the pedals, but I can't shake the feeling that I need to get out of these woods fast. The hospital is 20 minutes away. I just need to make it there. I'm close. So close. Bass rumbles behind me. It's followed by a rush of wind, enough to throw me forward while ravishing the forest like a tempest. Trees groan. Their frames break and kneel, surrendering to the gale. Branches and leaves come loose. They ricochet through the air like shrapnel, cutting into my cheek, and I throw up an arm to keep myself from losing an eye. This is insanity. It's lunacy. I don't know what's happening, but I know I have to make it through this. I have to get out of these woods, get back to the hospital to see my sister before the heart monitor flatlines.
She's not doing well. Are your mother and father home?
No, ma'am.
Can you get here to be with her? She doesn't have long.
Yes, ma'am. No matter what. The distant bass nears, growing thunderous. It's as though the whole world is shaking, like the earth might split in two and swallow me whole. I grit my teeth. I let loose a defiant roar, sweat pouring down my temples as my legs tremble, willing my bike forward. Faster, damn it! Faster! There's a flash, then another. Lightning? No. I'm answered by an explosion of light, so violent and bright that I can't see a damn thing. I holler, scream. My body jerks forward as my front wheel collides with what feels like a fallen branch. Next thing I know, I'm flying over my handlebars. What's the phrase? Ass over tea kettle. Yeah, that's it. I brace myself for a broken arm, maybe worse, but the pain never comes. Nothing comes. It's as though I'm floating in limbo, like gravity's unable to finish what it started. I can't feel a thing. Not the dirt beneath me, not my face pressed against the bark of a tree. For a little while, I think I'm dead, that I'm in purgatory. But then my eyes adjust. The world comes into focus, beginning as a blurry smudge, but soon becoming a picture-perfect recreation of my worst nightmare. I'm not in the forest anymore. I'm above it. I'm looking down at the mess of trees, and I'm terrified at how small they are, how much smaller they're getting with every passing second. I'm floating into the sky, being carried by a narrow beam of light. That was a long time ago. 30 years, give or take. A lot's changed since then. But one thing's remained the same. The nightmares. I have them every night. I dream about that blinding light, that same low bass, and that same gut-churning horror of being eaten by the sky. I used to think they were a coping mechanism. I figured that since the dreams came shortly after my older sister passed, that maybe they were just how my 11-year-old brain was dealing with the grief. My therapist seemed to agree. "You're quite right that there may be a link there," she'd tell me, lowering her glasses and offering a medical-grade smile. "It's very likely that these dreams are a form of abstract healing, a means to allow your mind to come to terms with its trauma." For a long time, I thought she was right. Or better put, I hoped she was. Now though, well, I think maybe we were both wrong. Shit, where are my manners? I'm over here rambling about my childhood, and you're wondering who the hell I am. My name is Isaiah Mitchell. I'm a boogeyman, but not the cool kind. I don't hide in closets or haunt old houses. I'm the type that your parents rant about while watching the evening news, the sort that tinfoil hats point to whenever things go wrong. I'm what you might call a man in black. The work I do is classified. It's the sort of work that happens behind the scenes, with shadowy people in shadowy circles. So when I tell you that last night something catastrophic happened, I'm not talking about the stock market dipping a couple percentage points. I'm not talking about increased traffic on your morning commute. I'm talking about trouble. Lots of it. It's the kind of trouble that's making me do something I don't generally do, which is break rules. By the end of this, I might break all of them. But this is important, and in moments like these, I find myself thinking about my late sister, Hope, and how she would have wanted me to do the right thing. It's how she raised me, after all. So here goes nothing. This begins with a story, but it ends with a decision. The story is mine, and the decision is yours. When I'm finished, you get to choose whether you spend the time you have left a little wiser or laugh this off as the ramblings of a lunatic. Whatever you choose, I'll have made my peace. The story is a personal one. It's about me, but it's also about you. It's about everything in the universe, right down to the last atom, and how all of us are facing a horror the likes of which we can't begin to imagine. It's the story of the worst night of my life, and what might one day be the worst night of yours. It goes like this. The beam of light sucks me up and spits me into absolute darkness. The sensory whiplash is enough to give me a headache, something like a migraine that pulses near my temples and feels like a bulldozer inside my skull. It's uncomfortable, but not half as uncomfortable as the situation I'm in. Hello? I mumble to the dark. I stumble to my feet, feeling around my environment blindly. It's cold, hard. It feels like I might be in a room full of metal, but I can't imagine where that would be. A warehouse? Footsteps echo in the distance. They're closing in. Who's there? I sputter, and I think maybe I've been drugged. People don't just up and float into the sky in the middle of the night. It isn't a thing. That means I'm hallucinating. That means whoever kidnapped me knows a thing or two about stealing kids. That means they're a professional. What's the phrase? Serial killer. Yeah, that's it. I clap my hands to my ears. It's that same bass from the forest, except now it's reverberating all around me. Another bass joins it. This one is different, coming from a new direction, with a lower tone. It's almost like they're communicating, like Morse code. Please, I beg. Just let me go. I swear I won't tell anybody. Static crackles. It's followed by a sharp squeal of microphone feedback, then the buzz of modulating frequency.
Communication calibrated.
A digital voice says.
Subject identified. Homo sapien. Geographic location. New Mexico. Language model. English.
There's a pause. It's long and silent enough that I can hear my pulse rushing through my veins. I'm positive I'm going to die. These things don't happen to people who live to tell the tale.
Can you understand us, Homo sapien?
The voice asks. Yes, I say. Can you turn on the lights? I ask. The only worse thing than being murdered is being murdered in the dark.
Yes,
they say. I'm blinded for the third time in as many minutes. I blink, my eyes adjusting to the green glow as it fills the chamber. Wherever I am, it's strange, alien. Tall vats of liquid are scattered around a large, circular room, each hosting tubes that extend outward to a central console. Everything is metallic. I can't make out any labels, any sort of identification at all.
Is this level of light sufficient?
Another voice asks, this one right behind me. I wheel around, and my breath catches in my chest. In front of me is something that doesn't exist, can't exist. It's roughly 10 feet tall, and it's got sharp teeth, sharp claws, scaled skin, and a tail. It's a monster, a living, breathing monster. Fuck! I scramble backward. My back collides with one of the vats, and blue liquid sloshes against the glass. The hell are you? I shout all at once.
We are the chosen,
says the first voice, approaching my other side.
We are life forms from many galaxies away. we have come to save humanity.
They stare at me through giant eyes, and each of those eyes are filled with dozens of pulsing pupils, almost like ink blots.
I've been abducted
I sputter, hardly able to breathe.
by aliens. Aliens are real, and I've been abducted.
Correct.
Says one of the aliens. I realize this one has gray scales, while the other has teal. At least I can tell them apart. Gray looks at his arm, and a digital screen comes to life. He taps at it with a crooked finger.
Readings indicate heightened levels of cortisol and increased adrenal flow. Source, fight or flight response. Biologically rational, but devoid of purpose.
He looks at me, cocks his overlarge head to the side.
You have neither the option to fight us or flee us, so it would be best to comply. Do you understand?
My jaw hangs open. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. Are these aliens really standing there reading me my Miranda rights?
Are you going to probe me?
I ask.
Like the movies?
Teal blinks at me, his pupil dilating.
Negative.
He points to a vat.
We will break down your genetic tissue into usable material, harvesting your most compatible DNA strands while discarding the rest. It is for the greater good.
I follow his finger to the tank, and now that I'm right up against it, I can see clearly what's floating inside. My stomach twists into a knot. Inside of it is a human body. Everything from the man's waist down has been dissolved, and what's left of his intestines are dangling freely.
Jesus Christ!
There is no cause for concern.
Teal says. He lumbers across the chamber to the metallic console that all the tubes are feeding into.
Your disappearance will be accounted for. A clone will be deployed to resume your life, preventing suspicion and avoiding social disruption.
Let me get this straight.
I say, trying to ignore how faint I'm starting to feel.
You're going to kill me to save humanity?
Correct.
The room spins. My chest gets tight, and my vision becomes a scrambled mess. My ears are ringing like church bells. I stumble, losing my sense of equilibrium, and I think I taste vomit in my throat.
No,
I mutter.
this isn't happening. Can't be happening.
I steady myself against a vat, looking up to see a dead woman's face staring back at me. Pieces of her skull have been eaten away. I can see the wrinkles of her brain underneath.
Heart rate out of range.
Gray says, but I hardly hear him. He grabs my wrist, presses a device against the center of my hand. I struggle, fight. I try to use my teeth, but he's strong, much stronger than me. A coldness pulses against my palm, almost like an ice cube. And soon that frigid sensation is traveling across my fingertips, up my arm.
What did you...
I mutter, but the sensation is rolling through the rest of my body. It's soothing. My eyes find my palm, and I see a strange shape seared into the skin. A scatter of dots surrounding a black square. Suddenly, I can't remember the thought I was trying to finish. Was any of this really worth panicking over? It was just a few corpses in vats, after all.
You have been administered a sedative.
Ray explains. My heart rate slows. My ears stop ringing. The ghost of a smile sneaks across my face. Gray's staring at his display.
Cortisol levels reduced. Adrenal response suppressed. Biometric readings indicate subject has achieved a suitable level of suggestibility to proceed. Affirmative,
says Teal, working the console. I feel like I'm drifting through the lake on a warm summer day. My heart is full. I'm in absolute bliss, and all I can think is that Hope should get to experience this before she dies.
Pulse is quickening.
Gray says with a frown. Hope, my sister, my dying sister, alone in the hospital wondering why her little brother abandoned her.
Sedation effect dropping.
Gray says.
98%, 94%. Emotional instability reaching unacceptable levels.
Oh,
I sputter, feeling like I'm coming out of a daze.
I have to get to the hospital. Please. My sister is sick. She needs me.
Gray presses the device against my other hand, and another pulse of relaxation courses through me.
Invalid concern.
He tells me.
Clone will be a perfect recreation of you, body, and mind. It will retain all memories, allowing it to continue your life uninterrupted. Conclusion: your expiring sibling will receive suitable emotional support prior to her decomposition.
Fucking aliens. It takes everything I have to fight against the sedative to make my case.
How?
I groan.
How is my DNA supposed to save humanity? What the hell is it saving us from anyway?
Teal turns from the console to face me. His giant eyes are narrowed in a thoroughly displeased manner.
Invalid request. Information too critical to risk dissemination. Rebuttal,
Says Gray.
Clone's memory can be modified. Current biometric readings indicate high levels of emotional discontent, placing likelihood of a compromised harvest at 34%. Solution: permit subject to understand purpose of sacrifice. Result: sense of closure and enhanced probability of project success.
Teal turns back to the console.
Rebuttal accepted. Proceed.
Gray looks at me. He places his scaly fingers against my head, and I squirm a little.
Brace yourself for disorientation.
He tells me.
You will experience physical unease and hyperstimulation. After, you will understand the horror that awaits your species in the dark.
For a long time, that's as far as the nightmare gets. Gray prattles on that I'm about to see the truth, some twisted fate that justifies melting humans into sludge. But before he can deliver the goods, I wake up. Every time. Blue balls doesn't begin to describe it. Last night, it happens again. The nightmare, I mean. Same aliens, same tanks of human soup. But this time I wake up in a cold sweat. My phone is ringing on the bedside table. There's a name on the screen that I hate to see.
What is it?
I grumble.
Jesus Christ, Mitchell. I've been calling for 10 minutes.
My boss, Lisa. She goes off. The words are coming out like machine gun fire, and from the background chatter, I figure she's speaking to more than just me. It sounds like there's a crowd around her, like she's briefing suits as she jogs down a hallway.
Got all that?
Something about a shitstorm. Something about an F-35. The Air Force just shot down a UAP, which is how we say UFO these days to avoid getting laughed out of the room. Apparently it happened in New Mexico, my backyard. This calls for a liter of coffee, maybe 2. I stumble into the kitchen and put a pot on. I have some time while she holds the phone to her chest and barks orders at the drones around her. 1 cream, 1 sugar. My spoon clinks against the side of the mug as her voice blares through the speaker.
Mitchell?
She says.
Still there?
She says she's got coordinates. I take a sip of scalding Java. I'm dazed enough I barely feel it burn my tongue. My fingers punch the coordinates into my laptop, bringing up the location the supposed UAP was shot down. I spit my coffee over my screen.
The fuck?
I mutter, leaning forward and doing a double take at the map.
What is it?
Nothing.
But it's a lie. The truth is, the coordinates are a dead match for the forest where I had my waltz with psychosis 30 years ago. They're the coordinates from my dream, right down to the rickety old bridge. I ask her if she's sure the numbers are correct.
Am I sure?
She snaps.
Look, if you're asking me if this is another Chinese spy balloon, then the answer is go fuck yourself. I've been pulling my hair out for the past 20 minutes. This is the real deal, so suit up and get ready to go. I've got a bird on the way.
The clock on my microwave reads 2:34 a.m., and my stomach is telling me to sort my life out.
Do I have time for breakfast?
I ask. The line goes dead. 20 minutes later, a helicopter is landing on my lawn. I board it in a daze, and we take off in the direction of the crash like we're trying to outrun a cruise missile. I'm watching the lights of the countryside drift by, and it occurs to me that from all the way up here, in the dead of night, they almost look like stars. I wonder how long it'd take to snuff them out. How long it'd take to burn a whole galaxy to ashes, to crush a universe in the palm of your hand. Things to consider. The closer we get to the crash site, the worse my thoughts become. They're bordering on obsessive. Radio chatter is coming through the comm line, something about aliens and extraterrestrials. but all I'm thinking about is controlling my bladder. I'm drowning in hypotheticals. I'm wondering what happens if I lose my mind between here and the crash site, what the protocols are, where they'll take me. Do I get the night off? The week?
Everything okay, sir?
It's the co-pilot. She's turning in her seat and looking at me like I'm having a medical emergency.
You look a bit pale.
She tells me. My muscles work overtime as I twist my mouth into a smile.
Never better.
I lie.
How far out are we? 20 miles.
She says with a reassuring grin. She turns back in her seat, and I take the opportunity to let out an exhausted sigh. I close my eyes and take a dozen deep breaths. Happy thoughts. I try to ignore how dry my mouth is, how badly my hands are shaking. I try to ignore the fact that every time I look down at my palms, I see that same scatter of dots, that same faded square that no doctor has been able to explain.
I've never seen scars like that.
They tell me.
How'd you get them?
I don't know, I tell them. I don't know. But I do. I've known this entire time, probably, but I've just been too terrified to accept it. I've known that I'm not what I think I am, that this world isn't what I think it is either. It's all of this that's making me want to curl into a ball. It's making me want to weep on the floor, to scream at the top of my lungs and pull my hair out with everything I have. It's making me want to throw open the helicopter door, take a breath of fresh air, and then plunge headfirst into the dirt like a human turnip. And if I thought it was that easy, I might just do it. But somehow, I know it isn't. I know it won't save me, won't save us from what's coming. See, last night I had the same dream I've had for the last 30 years. The same abduction, the same aliens. But last night, I got to see the director's cut, the extended edition. Last night, when Gray told me he was going to show me just how fucked we all are, he actually came through. Imagine that. What I saw was everything. I saw how all of this ends, how all of it began. What I saw is what's waiting for us in the black infinity of space. And now the more I think about it, the more I think it might be driving me mad.
Just up ahead.
Says the pilot.
10 minutes to touchdown.
8 minutes. 5.
Jesus.
He says at the 3-minute mark.
Are you seeing this?
Up ahead is a plume of smoke rising into the night sky. There's the faint flicker of fading fires, the haphazard glow of industrial lighting, and there, at the center of it all, is the unmistakable shape of something that shouldn't exist.
That doesn't look like it's from this planet.
The co-pilot mutters over the comm line.
No,
The pilot replies, and his voice is shaking.
it doesn't.
They're right. They both are. What it looks like is something extraterrestrial, something alien. It looks like something ripped straight from my worst nightmares. And really, that's just where I wish it had stayed. The moment Gray touches my head, static ripples across my skull. I froth at the mouth, choke. For a little while, I think I'm probably dying, but then I lose all sense of awareness. I'm falling. I'm breaching the atmosphere of my mind and crashing into a dimension outside of myself, outside of everything. Images flash. They're like a film reel, playing across my consciousness from every direction. They're everywhere, inescapable. It's as if I'm inhabiting them, as though they were moments in time and everything from sight, sound, and smell are collapsing in on one another like a dying star. Gray calls this disorienting. But then, just when I tell myself I want out, that I can't take it anymore because my disembodied ghost is about to explode, it slows. The whole process hits the brakes. The visual hurricane calms from a category 5 to a 3, and then settles into a 1. Moments float to the surface. Others sink out of sight. Like a sponge, my mind starts absorbing information. Everything from quantum physics to the lyrical discography of Shania Twain. Knowledge becomes trivial. As soon as I want to know something, I reach out and take it. It's exhilarating. But then, something catches my attention. It's a series of shimmering lights in my lake of thought. gleaming jewels that seem to be drawing me toward them. Somehow, I know that these are why I've come here. These are what Gray meant for me to find. The so-called truth that would justify all of the abductions, all of the murders. So I reach out. Information bombards me. It carpet bombs my mind. And in the overwhelming chaos of it all, the entire history of the cosmos is laid bare before me. I see it. I see everything. Gray and Teal? Not monsters. An alien species called the Vitar. Their technology eclipses humanity's, and they've existed for billions of years. They've done remarkable things in that time. Everything from mastering hyperlight travel to creating edible spray cheese. They've even charted the entirety of the cosmos. What I'm saying is they've been busy. But my revelations don't stop there. No, they keep coming. Tragedy. I see tragedy. I see it in the Vitar's search for answers. In their quest to uncover every nook and cranny of the universe, they come across two devastating discoveries. Firstly, they learn that they are alone in the cosmos. Secondly, they discover their species is going extinct. How? It happens like this. Near the edge of space, a Vitar ship discovers life. But it isn't intelligent. Far from it. This life is microbial, viral, and it infects the explorers. They toss themselves into quarantine. They're observed, and a shocking discovery is made. This virus? Not so bad. In fact, maybe it's just what they've been looking for. Soon, Vitarians across the cosmos are lining up to be infected with the virus. Within a century, their entire species are carriers. It jumps between them like the common cold, but they don't mind. Not at all. Why? Easy. This virus comes with a satisfaction guarantee. Biological immortality. Now there's a deal. The trouble is, these Vitar don't work like humans do. They don't have sex and make babies and then sleep and then wake up and do it again. No, these Vitar lay eggs, and only certain members of their species lay eggs. And what's more, they only lay eggs during a specific molting period at the end of their life cycles. See what I'm getting at? Biological immortality or laying eggs. Pick one. You can't have both if you're the Vitar. But by the time they figure this out, this virus has infected every last colony of their civilization. Unable to reproduce, their population enters freefall. It develops what's known as an existential crisis. And if there's one thing civil society hates, it's dealing with an existential crisis. Tempers flare. Emotions run hot. This brings us to the crux of the Vitarian dilemma. War. And lots of it. Worlds erupt into conflict. Galaxies become battlefields. And whole solar systems are laid to ash. If you thought nuclear weapons were bad, then consider what happens when a moon is kicked out of orbit into the surface of a planet. The bloodshed is immeasurable. As the fighting escalates, the stars themselves become weapons. The Vitar discover that if you can just push one toward instability, well, boom, there goes the neighborhood. These Vitar? Nothing if not creative. But it's just this penchant for outside-the-box problem-solving that massacres their species into the low billions. Over a single millennia, the Vitar are swept from an intergalactic species to one inhabiting a single world on the edge of space. Having met their downfall at the hands of their own technology, the surviving Vitar turn toward spiritualism. Cults form. Different sects have different beliefs, but one eventually consumes the rest. The way of the chosen. The way promises an end to Vitarian pain. No more existential crisis. No more killing. All the Vitar need to do is open their hearts and minds to a simple 3-step program. 1. Show a little pride. We're the only intelligent life in the universe, so start acting like it. 2. Persevere. Immortality is our final test. Keep your chin up. 3. ascend. Just make it to the heat death of the universe, and you'll be granted salvation. Believe it or not, it's a big hit. The Vitarians flock to it in droves because it offers what they need, a sense of purpose and a break from the emotional turmoil that's consumed them for decades. In a matter of years, the Way becomes the dominant socio-political force across the Vitarian homeworld, bringing the last of the warring factions together. It's a beautiful thing. But what's the phrase? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Yeah, that's it. Not everybody is a fan of how the Chosen conduct business, but the Chosen make it easy for them. All who disavow their belief system are exiled. It's for the good of the Vitarians, they say. And maybe they're right. After all, these are a species of aliens that have seen just what disagreements can lead to. Fire, fury, mass graves, and floating corpses in the vacuum of space. No, thank you. That's a risk they won't take. One of these exiled Vitarians is a scientist. He has no name in the shared memory except for the Heretic, and he is both the architect of humanity and the genesis of our greatest threat. In his assessment, the Vitarian extinction is an inevitability. He perceives their current peace as fragile, held up by a corrupt theocracy whose foundations could crumble at any moment. Once they do, boom, back to war, back to genocide. It won't be pretty. Worse still, when the last of the Vitar perish, so too will the last form of complex intelligence. Their species won't just die. It'll be forgotten. The universe will become a barren void, an unconscious minefield of drifting cadavers. That will be their legacy. But the Heretic, he's a mover and a shaker. He's the sort of individual who likes to solve problems, not create them. And so when he thinks of the Vitarian extinction, when he acknowledges it as a slow-motion inevitability, he isn't giving up. No, he has a plan. It's not a great plan, mind you. It's not even a plan with a high likelihood of success, and nor, for that matter, is it a plan that's strictly legal. But it is a plan. It goes like this. If the Vitarians are dying out, then something must replace them. There must be intelligent life to take their place, to give warmth to this cold cosmos, and remember their legacy. Since no other intelligent life exists in all the universe, that leaves him a single option. He'll just have to make some. And this Heretic, this mover and shaker, well, he succeeds. And really, that's where this nightmare begins. The helicopter touches down in a clearing that shouldn't exist. I step out to find a forest that's broken, smoldering, one that's cleaved in two with a cloud of cinders in its wake. This isn't how I remember this place. Not at all. I remember a wooden bridge over a lazy creek and tall trees that...
Mitchell!
Somebody's calling my name, running toward me. My boss. Lisa's got her phone pressed to one ear, and her other hand is frantically waving at me. All around us are government personnel, fellow men in black types, looking equal parts panicked and terrified. Nice to know I'm not alone.
Mitchell!
Lisa says, breathless.
Finally! Follow me!
We take a stroll down the newest gully in America. Pieces of splintered metal scatter the ground, and here and there I see techs in hazmat suits brushing dust from the debris. Above us, the moon is being shrouded by a gigantic tarp. They're extending it across the entire crash site, likely hoping they can get it up before foreign satellites move into position and stick their noses into our business.
Looks like a war zone out here,
I say, loosening my tie. It's hot out. Or maybe my anxiety's just turning my body into a furnace. Either way, Lisa's not paying attention.
Understood, sir. I'll keep you posted with any and all updates as soon as we have them.
She hangs up her phone and turns to me.
Sorry, did you say something, Mitchell? Tonight's been a nightmare.
I can imagine. As we make our way toward the UAP, Lisa tells me the government's been hounding her for details. What exactly did we shoot down? Are we going to war? She says we've probably got 3 hours until the media wakes up, and then we'll need to start beating the journalists back with sticks.
This is a fucking disaster.
She tells me, and she reaches into her jacket and grabs a flask.
Whiskey?
I shake my head.
Haven't touched this stuff for years. Suit yourself.
Bottoms up. She wipes her mouth and shoves the flask back into her jacket, taking the sort of breath you take when you've hit your limit.
I should have kept on as an accountant,
She says.
I'd still be in bed right now.
The closer we get to the UAP, the easier it is to see through the haze of smoke. The craft is no longer just a smudge in the distance. Now I can make out its general shape, its general size. It looks big enough to pass for a stadium and round enough to sell the illusion.
A flying saucer.
Lisa says, shaking her head.
You'd think these aliens never heard of a bad cliche.
We get to the edge of the perimeter and flash our badges. 3 soldiers let us through.
Listen,
Lisa tells me, stopping and putting a hand on my shoulder.
before we go inside this thing, I want you to take a few deep breaths, okay? We've had a couple of incidents already.
Incidents? I ask.
Sure. One guy pissed his pants. Another was taking photos of this corpse in a vat, and he throws up all over the inside of the vat, not the corpse. Whatever. Point is, he completely fucked the lab team trying to get a sample.
She runs a hand through her hair and chuckles darkly.
Luckily, there are about a dozen other corpses where that came from, but still, the smell was awful.
Vats. Corpses. My stomach does a front flip, and I almost take a page out of the photographer's playbook.
So this is the real deal,
I mutter, pretending this whole thing doesn't feel uncomfortably familiar.
Aliens actually exist, huh? Just wait,
Lisa says, stepping into the dark of the ship.
the next part is gonna blow your mind.
The heretic creates life in his image, using Earth as his petri dish. His first life forms are what you'd call prototypes, rough drafts. They're giant reptiles, dinosaurs, and a scattershot of various traits in biology. They're a means to discover what works and what doesn't on the path to evolving complex intelligence. He studies them closely. Then he studies them some more. But what's the phrase? Nothing lasts forever. Yeah, that's it. The Vitarian are no strangers to war. They've got a stable of highly advanced military technology gathering dust since their turn to peace. And the Chosen? They control all of it. One of these pieces of military tech is a fleet of surveillance drones, the sort that drift through the cosmos and ping if they see something suspect. One of these happens to drift by Earth. Can you guess what happens next? Images of the heretics, well, heresy, are transmitted to the Chosen. Minutes later, he gets a collect call from 40 billion light years away. It's the Chosen High Council, and they aren't pleased. What is this? They ask. Blasphemer, they condemn. But the heretic isn't shocked by this. He knows the way, and he knows that they see the creation of new life forms as the exclusive domain of their deity. He knows that what he's done is criminal, that it borders on treasonous, and that it's maybe grounds for execution. So he tells them to relax. Take a breath, he tells them. It's you or us, they say. I can explain, he tells them. Don't bother, they say. The line goes dead. The heretic figures he's got about a handful of weeks before the Chosen arrive to annihilate him, so he flees to a neighboring star system. But after arriving, he realizes the Chosen were never aiming for him, only his blasphemy. They redirect a passing meteor's trajectory to collide with the Earth. The moment it impacts, everything on the planet turns to fire. 6 trillion life forms scream out in agony as their bones are seared to ash. And somewhere, the heretic weeps. Years pass. Decades. Centuries turn to millennia. And millennia become eons. And the heretic decides to risk returning to Earth. He wants to find closure for the loss of his creation. He wants to pay his respects. But when he arrives, his sorrow becomes hope. Life, it seems, has survived. More than that, it has thrived. Yet this life isn't the same that he set out to create. No, this life is the biological progeny of tiny animals he created to feed his prototypes. They're what you and I might call mammals. Except some of these mammals are impressive. They have large brains, opposable thumbs, and what's more, they look a bit like you and me. They're humans, among the first. And the heretic is fascinated by them. He recognizes they possess complex intelligence, sentience, and a strong sense of adaptability. He observes them as they form social groups, watches as they create the ghosts of language. Yes, he thinks, this is it. These life forms will inherit the universe, and in doing so, immortalize the Vitar in their memories. But a problem remains: the chosen. If they discover the Earth is teeming with life, then they'll circle back and finish the job. This time, they won't pull punches. The planet will become an asteroid field, and all of its life will be red mist upon the floating rocks. But what to do? How to keep humanity alive, to shield it from the overwhelming might of the Vitarian military? It seemed impossible. Equations run through the heretic's mind. Scenarios infest his thoughts, and in not a single one can he fathom succeeding. He has one ship, no weapons to speak of. He lacks military training and is more scientist than saboteur. And then it occurs to him: the humans are hardy creatures, adaptable. Given time, they will evolve. Given time, they will reach intellectual parity with the Vitarians. Then, their superior numbers could compensate for any gaps in technology. But such a plan hinges upon humanity getting up to speed, ascending to a singularity in which their evolution becomes exponential. The heretic cannot afford to wait millions of years when the chosen could discover him any day. No, it'll require his interference. He'll need to spike the gene pool, rig the results. He'll need to give humanity more than a push. He'll need to throw it down the damn stairs if they have any hope of surviving. But there's a way. Yes, there's always a way. He devises a solution called Project Runaway. It starts by creating a new life form. It's aesthetically identical to a human male, but it's born from the genetic harvest of thousands of its peers. Each strand of its DNA is carefully selected for, prioritizing the potential for runaway evolution. Then, these strands are spliced with Vitarian genes. Not much, but enough to access fragments of the shared memory, the collective recall. This allows the man to gain intuitive understanding of billions of years' worth of wisdom. It permits him to think faster, to adapt more quickly. Then, as this man spreads his genes throughout the population, his progeny will inherit his DNA. They too evolve quicker, think faster. This is how it works. This is how humanity inherits the cosmos.
Watch your step.
Lisa says, stepping into the UAP. I follow her inside. For a moment, I'm blinded by the glare of industrial work lamps. Then my senses are assaulted by a cacophony of sound and movement. We've entered a hive of activity. Crowds of people buzz around us, some in biohazard suits, others in military camo. Where we are is a large circular chamber, one surrounded by large corridors leading to other locations of the ship. Right now, teams are taping those entrances up with plastic wrap. Other teams are setting up perimeters, hanging pieces of paper above archways labeled A through Z.
You all right, Mitchell? What? Are you all right?
Lisa says, and she's got her arms folded. She's looking at me like she thinks I'm about to become her newest headache. Maybe piss myself all over the deck.
I'm fine,
I tell her, forcing a smile.
It's just a lot to take in, you know? Never been in an alien spaceship before.
Sure, she says, lifting an eyebrow.
Join the club. We're heading down Corridor D to find somebody named Major Luca. I was talking to her a few seconds before you showed up. She said she's got something to show me. Something big. Spare me the suspense, Lise. What are we after? From the sounds of it, bodies. Bodies? I say. Like those corpses you mentioned? The ones in vats? Not quite. According to Luca, these bodies aren't exactly... Well, they're not human, probably.
She punches my arm, gives me a cheeky smirk.
Relax, Mitchell. The Major confirmed they're already dead. Nothing to be scared of. Let's go.
She leads us down the corridor labeled D, and every step I take is worse than the last. My heart is flying. It's pounding a million beats a minute. I put on my best poker face, nodding along as Lisa briefs me on the UAP, but internally I'm having a breakdown. It's taking everything I have not to hyperventilate. The further we get into the spacecraft, the more I'm wondering how much of my dreams were dreams. The more I wonder if all I am is just some clone with a badge.
What did the bodies look like?
I ask, clearing my throat.
Did these aliens have scales and tails? And sort of look like lizards?
Lisa laughs.
No idea. Luca didn't give me much of a description, but I'd bet money they were little green men. It'd go with the whole flying saucer motif, don't you think? Yeah,
I swallow.
suppose it would.
She chatters on. This, that, something else. Apparently, they've got an ironclad alibi to deal with the journalists. Something banal enough to keep them far away from the crash site. But I'm too deep in my own thoughts to register what she's saying. I'm too deep remembering all the awful aspects of the dream that wasn't supposed to be real. I'm remembering him, the runaway. And the more I remember, the more I wish I could forget. The first time the runaway opens his eyes, he's 20 years old. He's laying naked in the jungle, the sun scorching his skin with ultraviolet rays. He sits up. He has no instructions, no guidance. The world is entirely new to him, utterly foreign, and in his stomach flutters the first ghosts of adrenaline. From the outer ring of Saturn, the heretic watches. The runaway rises to his feet. He takes his first shaking, trembling step by step and stumbles into the grass. He groans. Pain. A new sensation. He gets back up, tries again. It's harder than it looks, walking when you've never done it before. But eventually he gets the picture. For him, it gets easier by the second. After only an hour, he's running through the ferns, climbing trees, and his stomach is screaming. Food. He must find food. But what to eat? By his third hour alive, the runaway has learned to forage. By his sixth, he's consumed enough poisonous berries to floor an elephant and is writhing on the ground. The poison burns his stomach. It makes his tongue swell and his skin glisten with sweat. But as the seconds become minutes, the agony fades to pain, and that eventually fades to healing. His body is adapting. His digestive systems are themselves against the poison, and soon the runaway rises back to his feet. Evolution has begun. As the sun sets, the runaway collects wild game from crude traps. He has been subconsciously tapping into the collective recall, intuitively teaching himself to skin animals, to make fires, to cook flesh for taste and health. He is learning. As the weeks come to a close, the runaway is surrounded. A pack of wolves has been hounding him for days, and now they've come to deal with this trespasser upon their territory. They circle him, their teeth gnash, saliva leaking from their jaws. In their throats is a growl, a threat of death. But the runaway has learned to handle his fear. Now, it serves him. His muscles tense, his hands flex in and out of fists, and his eyes follow the beasts as they pad the ground. The large one, he thinks. The large wolf will engage, and the rest will follow. But he doesn't give it time. He dashes forward, faster than even the wolves can react, and he brings his fist down upon the skull of the largest. The animal is stunned, dazed, He follows up by grabbing its jaws and pulling with all of his might. The other wolves flee. They yelp and they scream as their champion falls to the dirt, dead. The runaway dresses himself in its hide. At the end of the month, the runaway has evolved to the point where he barely needs to eat. 20 calories a day serve him all that he needs. A handful of berries, and he can operate at peak mental and physical capability. By the end of his second month, he no longer needs to breathe. He fishes hundreds of meters below the surface, fighting off sharks for choice morsels swimming in the deep. On the anniversary of his birth, the heretic observes that the runaway no longer ages. His DNA suffers no damage each time it splits. He has become biologically immortal. After 5 years, he transcends humanity. The runaway is now capable of perceiving individual atoms, and by the 6th year of his life, he can manipulate them. Matter becomes his plaything. The laws of physics become little more than suggestions. And so if he wants to fly, then he does. If he wants to reach into the minds of living creatures, he does that too. The runaway has become the most powerful life form to ever live. But the heretic is not concerned. No, he sees what his creation is. He sees that this anomaly, this runaway, is kind, empathetic. With each passing year, his interest in violence wanes. Before long, the runaway cuts himself off from humanity altogether, unable to stomach their wanton savagery and thirst for blood. Some have taken to worshiping him, others reviling. To him, they are all the same, misguided, fearful, and ruled by instincts he has learned to see beyond. These humans may as well be a separate species. To find respite from this chaos, he meditates. Sometimes he does this at the bottom of the sea. Other times, he does this atop high, wind-swept peaks. Anywhere his senses are sufficiently assailed to block out the madness of the world around him. And it's while meditating on one of these peaks that the runaway begins looking to the stars. He wonders if there may be more out there. Is it possible, he thinks aloud, that there are others like me? Could I find a companion of my own? And it's while he's pondering these thoughts, while he's gazing into the deepness of space, that he finds something looking back at him. A lizard, housed with a strange capsule, floating in the outer rings of a celestial body we know as Saturn. It is the first time he and his maker lock eyes. Weeks later, the runaways breached the atmosphere of Earth. A month after that, he's traversed the solar system and made it to the heretic's ship. He's tapping on the hull. The heretic welcomes him inside. "Hello," the heretic says in the ancient tongue of man. The runaway peers at him. "Hello," he says slowly. But it is not in the ancient tongue of man. It is in the low bass of Vitarian. "Your language is strange, but I believe I can master it. Who are you? Why have you been watching me?" The heretic doesn't see the point of mincing words. He comes clean about everything. After all, the runaway is capable of looking into his thoughts. What's the use of playing coy? He starts with the extinction of the Vitarian people and ends with humanity's role as inheritors of the universe and the runaway's role in leading them there. "Have you any questions?" the heretic asks. "Many," the runaway tells him. "Above all, why do you fear me?" "I don't," the heretic says. "You do. I see it reflected in your thoughts." "The fear you see reflected in my thoughts," the heretic begins, speaking with careful deliberation. "It does not belong to me. You are viewing fragments of the collective recall, a shared knowledge passed down by my people. You are viewing the beliefs of those of us who remain from the old war, followers of the way of the chosen." "These followers," the runaway says, his expression twisting with shock and horror. "They think of me as a monster, an abomination,
Not exactly,
the heretic tells him.
strictly. They do not think of you at all. In order to protect my work, I cut myself off from the collective some time ago. So all you're seeing are faint echoes of their dogma. To them, my work is blasphemy. But yes, I believe that should they learn of you, your vast capabilities would indeed frighten them. They would think of you a monster.
And to you? The runaway asks.
What am I to you?
The heretic reaches toward the runaway, claps his shoulder. He smiles in the human way.
I am a barren life form, ravaged by a virus that has stolen the hope of my people. I am unable to achieve my biological imperative. Reproduction is beyond me. You ask me what you are to me? You are my legacy.
He slowly, awkwardly performs the human ritual of embrace, wrapping his arms around the runaway.
You are my son.
I take a breath. It's brief, gasping. Gray is standing in front of me, his pupils pulsing. And I'm suddenly aware that his name isn't Gray, it's War. He's 70 million years old. Not only that, but so is his friend. And his name isn't Teal, but Kez. They're both devotees of the Way of the Chosen.
Did you see?
War asks, and he's no longer using his digital translator. After the thought transference, it seems I can understand the Vitarian language, make sense of the various vibrations that previously just seemed like low bass.
Yes,
I say, leaning forward.
but not everything.
I look up at War and hit him with an accusatory glare.
There's more to this story, isn't there? What aren't you telling me?
Kez twists his neck to look at me. His pupils are blowing up and shrinking in quick succession. A reaction I now understand to mean I'm pissed.
You have seen enough, human. Prepare for genetic deconstruction and we will be done with this.
No!
I exclaim, and I'm surprised to hear my voice rumbling throughout the ship. It's thunderous. I clear my throat.
No!
I say, and this time my voice is appropriately subdued. Vitarian is apparently a powerful language.
If you want me to jump into a vat and turn into a corpse chili or whatever, then you have to show me it's worth it.
The Vitar exchange glances. War's pupils shrink. He's nervous, concerned.
To show you more may invite excess unease,
He says. It was my hope that a brief glance at the history, the origin of everything, could provide necessary closure to commence the harvest of your DNA.
Look,
I say.
I've seen a lot. I know that whatever genetic material you're grabbing off people is a lot more useful if we're agreeable. It's like hunting an animal. Kill it scared, and the meat is tough. It's a chemical thing, I get that. And I'm telling you that if you show me the rest, I'll let you do what you need. I'll play my part.
invalid request.
Kez says.
Such knowledge is beyond your capacity to bear.
I frown.
It's him, isn't it? The runaway. It's obvious he's the source of your fear, and this so-called mission to save humanity. Yeah, I might not have all the details, but just looking at your reactions, it's gotta be. More than that, I can guess you haven't had much luck dealing with him either.
War and Kez don't speak a word. Their expressions say everything I need to know.
The way I figure it,
I continue, getting to my feet and taking a deep breath.
is that I'm a human too. On some level, I'm like the runaway. Just less, well, terrifying. But maybe there's something in those visions. Something in the runaway's actions or his behaviors that only a human could make sense of. Ever think of that? I mean, what if I can help you catch something you're missing? Isn't that chance worth taking?
The Vitar are quiet. They stare at one another for a long while, and their pupils explode in waves of emotion. Kez turns away. He lets out a gruff warble and throws up his arms, cursing War and me both.
What's his problem?
I ask. War steps forward. He gingerly looks back to his companion, but Kez's back is turned, hunched over the console in clear disagreement.
Kez does not wish to harm your mind.
War says quietly.
Your story of your sister. This expiring human you call Hope, well, it has moved him. He fears that if I show you the rest of the runaway story, it will cause your mind to fracture, shattering your consciousness in such a way that it may not be repaired. There will be no perfect clone. Your sister will find no solace in her dying moments.
I look at Kez and watch him tap at the console's controls, and I can't help but feel guilty for judging him so harshly. At the end of the day, he was just looking out for my sister. But, on the other hand, he also wants to turn me into DNA soup.
This feels important.
I say to War, balling my hands into fists.
If this really is about the fate of humanity, the fate of everything, well, I think Hope would want me to do anything I could to help.
I plaster a weak smile onto my face, trying to hype myself up with fake confidence.
Besides, I can't imagine it's that bad, is it?
War places his hands on my temples and closes his eyes.
You're right.
He tells me.
You cannot begin to imagine how bad it is.
Images riot past me. I'm falling again, out of my body and out of my mind, back into the collective history of the Vitarian species. Millennia pass in moments. Epochs become blurs. My very consciousness is straining under the weight of it all, like a molten ball of mental energy growing redder with every new detail, every new memory. And then it cools. The maelstrom of history becomes a focused lens. Once again, I'm observing the spacecraft orbiting the rings of Saturn. It's the same ship that the heretic and the runaway are standing in, exchanging words that will decide the fate of the universe.
They have come for my world before,
the runaway says, blinking as he scans the heretic's memories.
They took the great lizards then. I see it in your thoughts. Their strike was powerful enough to nearly wipe out all life, to bring the planet to its knees and make molten liquid scream from its surface. If they return, yes,
the heretic tells him, placing a hand against the observation window. In the distance is a speck of green in a field of darkness, magnified by a digital overlay.
They will ensure the planet is shattered, along with all life it hosts. They cannot understand you, and this frightens them. And if they understood me?
The runaway asks.
If I visit them, if I go to this world of the chosen, and show them that I am not some tool of violence, would they forgive you then? Forgive my world?
The heretic's pupils shrink, becoming tiny beads.
1,000,000 years of peace could not convince them to love you. It is against their nature. To them, you will always be a false god, a pretender. A false god?
The runaway mutters.
If I am a false god, then who is the true god?
His expression hardens, his eyes narrowing as he sorts through deeper pools of knowledge within the heretic's mind. Suddenly he takes a sharp breath and stumbles against the hull of the ship.
Him. The distant one.
The heretic explains, predicting what his creation has seen.
Yes, he is the deity of the chosen, a so-called omnipotent force that exists just beyond the reaches of the universe, in a place called Edge.
The runaway's lips tremble. His eyes, unblinking, grow bloodshot.
This Edge, have you ever visited it? No,
says the heretic, sitting down next to him.
It is an unreachable place. Many have set out on pilgrimages to traverse the Edge, but none have returned. If the universe can be called hostile to life, then that place holds an active malevolence for it. None who seek it survive.
The runaway is silent. His mouth hangs open, and he gives the impression that even his ever-expanding intellect is struggling to handle this philosophical equation. Minutes pass. The runaway does not move. He does not respond to the heretic's prompts. The two sit in silence for hours. The runaway lowers his head.
These humans are not like me,
He says at last.
and nor are you.
Something wet slips from the corner of his eye. A tear? Yes. More come. They fall in a torrent.
I am born from these humans.
He says, his words fragmented beneath the weight of his grief.
I am shaped by them, but they torment me with their genetic influence. I am driven toward compassion. My body screams for connection. But to me, these humans offer nothing. Their thoughts are too limited to grant me wisdom. Their perspectives too narrow to afford me connection. With every passing moment, my mind expands. My function grows. I have become powerful beyond belief. But I would throw it all away to be like them.
He turns his head, locking eyes with the heretic.
Why? Why would you make me this way?
The heretic's words are fragile.
I am sorry.
He says,
You must know that it was never my intention to hurt you, child. Were it possible, I would do anything to make that pain go away.
The runaway looks away. His hands become fists. He raises an arm and wipes the tears from his eyes.
Perhaps you already have, Father. Child,
The heretic says,
I don't understand your meaning. Connection.
the runaway explains, rising to his feet. He leans his head against the observation window, looks out into the black abyss of space and swallows.
I will find somebody like me. Somebody that understands what it means to stand above all other forms of life.
An uneven smile slips across his lips.
I will find God.
My consciousness crashes back into me. I gasp, throwing my head backwards, smashing it against a deconstruction tank.
Fuck!
War grasps my shoulders. He's staring at me with a wild look, and Kaz is right behind him. Both of their pupils are exploding like fireworks.
You saw?
They ask in unison.
More than last time.
I mutter, rubbing my head.
The runaway went to look for God. Or the distant one, I guess.
Yes,
War says somberly.
the distant one. The runaway sought out the edge.
He pauses, looking concerned.
We had to pull you out of the recall. Biometrics indicated your body was under considerable stress. How do you feel, human?
A little fuzzy, but not too bad.
I blink up at the Vitar duo.
Everything all right?
They exchange looks. Kez huffs, stalking back to his console, his clawed feet echoing off the metal deck. War's eyes are wide. He's pleased.
We were able to pull considerable data from you during the recall. I think it may help us in our mission, greatly enhancing humanity's chance for survival.
Great.
I say.
Does that mean you're not going to deconstruct me?
Oh no.
War says.
Your genetic material has become even more useful. If we can marry it with the neurological data we processed during your time in the recall, we can accelerate the production of our countermeasure.
Maybe it's the sedative wearing off. Or maybe I'm just tired of being buried alive in cosmic horror.
So that's it then?
I snap, rounding on War.
I get an inch away from understanding the biggest dick in the universe, and instead of throwing me a bone, showing me how it ends, you just expect me to jump into a pit of acid and do my part?
No,
Kez says.
you will enter the recall once more. But
War starts. Kez's pupils flare.
the human has aided our efforts at great personal risk. Now is the time to provide him the closure we promised.
His attention turns back to me.
Though this human must acknowledge he may not re-emerge from the recall, this final trip may destroy him.
I swallow. War is fretting.
Another recall could limit our ability to harvest the DNA. After what we just discovered, when the heretic created humanity,
Kez says, cutting him off.
he did so under the belief that humans would one day choose their own destiny. Perhaps it is time we let this one make such a choice.
War turns back to me. There's an expression of deep concern in his features.
Your last recall has given us much data to work with. If you go back, if your mind fractures, then we may not be able to use what we recovered to aid in human salvation.
They're both staring at me. It's like getting to the final episode of X-Files and being told you'll never learn how it ends. Not unless you doom every human on Earth.
And if I can take it,
I say, sorting through my thoughts.
if I can handle another dip into the recall, then is it possible you'd be able to pull even more useful data from me? Could I accelerate this so-called salvation even faster?
Hypothetically,
Kez says.
but the chances are slim. Your hope may not receive the support you desire, as the cloning process will be compromised. It may not be possible to produce a clone at all.
A slim chance is still a chance,
Do it.
I tell them.
Show me how this ends.
My mind catches fire. I feel my consciousness fracture and split, shuddering beneath an unbearable force. For the third time, I descend into the collective recall, and this time I know I can't take it. Thoughts begin to burn up, memories ignite, scorching to ashes as they're blown into the void. I'm losing time, losing all sense of self. My mother's name, what was it again? Wendy? Whitney? No, something else. My birthday, how old am I? 11? 14? I'm watching myself fall to pieces from the inside out, and it's terrifying, bit by bit. I'm forgetting who I am, what I am. Human? Vitar? Who am I? And then it stops. Everything stops. The cacophony of panic, the missing memories, and the impossible fear. It fades to black. No, not black, but space. I'm gazing out into space. There's a ship here, a metallic craft floating outside a large planet with rings. And suddenly, piece by piece, the memories come back. Saturn. This ship belongs to the heretic. I have to investigate. I have to know how this ends. Inside, the heretic is pacing back and forth. He is deep in thought, and there is no sign of the runaway. He's gone, I realize. He's left to find God, or the distant one, or the edge. Whatever it is, he's gone, missing. The heretic is concerned. He does not think of his creation as volatile, as threatening. But if it were to make contact with the edge, that place where the laws of physics become unknowable and violent, then there's no telling what will happen. No, he must intercept the runaway before he reaches the outer limits of the universe. He must stop his child. But his ship cannot track him. He is but one Vitarian, and his resources are limited. This heretic, he's a smart guy, a real mover and shaker, and so he knows what he has to do. It scares him. There will be consequences, but perhaps not worse than the consequence of inaction. He contacts the Chosen. They have the resources he needs, controlling the vast fleet of surveillance drones scattered throughout the cosmos. If they allow him their access, then maybe, just maybe, he can find the runaway and convince his child to stay in the bounds of this universe. Maybe, just maybe, he can save us all. He opens a communication channel. The Chosen aren't happy with him, not happy at all.
What have you done?
They say.
You have doomed us in your arrogance.
They tell him.
It was never my intention.
He replies.
If we move quickly, we can stop him. We can still set things right. Remain where you are.
They order. He does as he's told. For he is not a fool, and he knows that there is no longer anywhere he can run. This is a disaster he must confront head on. This is his reckoning. The Chosen imprison the heretic. They deploy a fleet to intercept the runaway, but they fail to reach him in time. He breaches the edge, vanishes beyond the furthest reaches of the universe, and enters that forbidden realm belonging to eternity itself. He is with the distant one now. God help us all. Years pass. The Chosen torture the heretic. They demand he tell them everything he knows. He does. He holds nothing back, except for the birth of humanity. That is a secret that he cannot reveal. The Chosen must never punish the humans for his folly in creating the runaway. The humans must persist. He believes they may yet be our only hope. Decades pass. The heretic sits in chains, buried in a prison deep beneath the dirt. He is being kept alive while the Chosen monitor the edge, nervous of the runaway returning. If he does, they may need the heretic. He could hold the key to solving this. 100 years pass, then 900 more. As the 1,000-year anniversary of the runaway's blasphemy, a Vitarian vessel reports anomalous activity near the edge. Space there is behaving strangely. It's a phenomena they've seen only once before, when the runaway stepped beyond the edge to find God. Something is emerging. It's him. The Vitarian military is deployed to intercept the runaway. His appearance has changed. His body now sallow and long, his eyes sunken and black. Images are relayed to the heretic, who has been called before the High Council to advise on the situation.
This is not him.
He tells them.
This is not my son. Then what is it?
They ask. But if the heretic knows, he does not speak of it. He watches the video feed in detached horror, his whole body trembling as 1,000 military vessels surround the runaway. His creation does not move. He floats idly just beyond the edge, unbothered by the building threat around him.
Surrender,
the flagship demands.
or we will be forced to open fire.
Fire, says the runaway, and the words echo in the minds of everything across the universe.
You know nothing of fire.
With a wave of his hand, 1,000 warships are torn apart. They crumble, exploding in blue and black flames as their video feeds are extinguished one by one. A distant surveillance droid relays the carnage. It shows the High Council the nightmare unfolding, and shows the heretic too. He weeps, howls in despair. But the High Council has had 1,000 years to prepare for this. They are not yet finished. As the last of the warships burn to dust, they reveal a ring of planets surrounding the runaway. These planets have come a long way. They have been carted from distant solar systems, distant galaxies, and they have come here for one reason: to become dust. The High Council flips a switch. Powerful thrusters begin to move the planets toward the runaway, 100 of them converging on him at faster and faster speeds. Their surfaces tremble, their cores begin to shudder. One by one, the planets crash into the runaway. He is buried beneath a solar system, the resultant shockwaves causing the galaxy to shake. From light years away, the High Council observe with bated breath. The heretic does not look up, for he knows that this ungodly display of force is nothing compared to a god itself. What has happened to his child? How has the Edge corrupted him so? As the last of the planets impact the runaway, as the last of their fire and fury fades to scattered rubble, he is revealed to be a mangled corpse. His torn carcass floats between the debris. Pieces of him are scattered millions of miles apart, and these images are shared across the collective recall to all living Vitarians. They jump. They cheer. The false god is no more. The pretender has been unseated from his crooked throne. But, bit by bit, his mangled carcass begins to move. It drifts at first, slowly, but then it picks up speed, and soon pieces of his arms are smashing into his torso, and fragments of his skull are snapping up against one another. He is reforming himself, resurrecting. What returns in his place is a monstrosity. It is a twisted mess, an abomination with 9 arms and 3 legs. Its head is overlarge, misshapen and draped in patches of black hair, and his eyes are swirling, endless pools of cosmic abyss. No longer, the heretic thinks, is this thing living. It is now beyond life, beyond everything. But the High Council is not convinced. 1,000 years is a long time, and it's longer still for a race as advanced as the Vitar. They have suffered wars that have ended solar systems, turned whole galaxies into wastelands, and so they are no strangers to violence. This runaway, he will learn his place one way or another. Those planets were never meant to end the monster. No, they were merely an opening move, a distraction to give the High Council time to prepare their real weapon. And now it is ready. In the crackling feed of a distant surveillance drone, the heretic watches as a red hypergiant star begins to pulse. Plasma lashes from its surface. It throbs. This is it, the most powerful weapon in the Vitarian arsenal, a supernova, and they're triggering it on one of the largest stars in all the universe. There's a flicker of light, and the drone feed goes dead. Another drone is tapped from a neighboring solar system, and it reveals a distant glimmer that's growing and growing. It's an explosion that's engulfing everything within billions of miles. It's stretching outward and consuming neighboring systems, whose planets and stars are vaporized in the cataclysmic fury of a dying titan. And then the explosion fades. It reveals nothing. Multiple star systems burn to less than ash. Even the runaway is no more. It seems too good to be true. The heretic wants to believe, but he can't. He knows just what his creation is capable of, having already seen it recover from being splintered into pieces and scattered across space. He may be vaporized, but... And there, slowly, pieces of matter begin to grow in the void. They grow and they grow, reforming until the runaway's screaming mouth emerges from a body now wholly unrecognizable as human. It's a skeletal figure, long and decrepit, with dozens of limbs and 1,000 mouths. Its eyes have become one, and within it, there is emptiness. But the assault isn't over. The High Council grip their table, watching with nervous trepidation as the final phase of their attack begins. At the center of the supernova, something is forming. It's swirling. Matter is being drawn into it. Light itself. The hypergiant star has collapsed into a supermassive black hole, and its gravitational force is such that even neighboring galaxies feel its pull. The runaway is being dragged toward it, still weakened from the largest explosion since the birth of the cosmos. He cannot resist its might. The event horizon is calling to him, beckoning him toward the most powerful trash compactor in all the universe, and he is powerless before it.
Now we will crush him.
The High Council declares across the collective recall. Vitarians cheer.
Now we will break his bones.
Vitarians cheer.
Now we will unmake the Unmaker.
Vitarians cheer.
We do this for all of the Chosen, to bring glory to the Distant One.
They cheer and they cheer. The heretic watches through the recall as Vitarians celebrate in the streets, sing and dance, and speak scripture as they hold their arms to the sky in the way of prayer. It is done, they think. This is their judgment day, their final test, and now they will join the Distant One in the Edge. Now they will be granted their salvation. They will ascend. But the heretic sees what they cannot. As the High Council exchanges congratulations, the heretic is watching as the hole's pull on the runaway diminishes. It's subtle. The distance the runaway is covering is slowly being reduced from millions of miles per second to thousands, to hundreds. He is evolving. As he reaches the event horizon, where time and space begin to warp, the runaway does something he hasn't done in 1,000 years. He opens his mouth and takes a breath. And this black hole, this unfathomable force of gravity, is sucked up inside of him. His mouth closes. He swallows.
I had almost forgotten,
The runaway says. his guttural voice echoing across all of creation.
What pain felt like?
He blinks out of existence. The High Council exchange looks of utter terror. The heretic is bawling on the floor, for he knows that what comes next will be a horror none can imagine.
End this.
He begs them,
End us all.
and in his mind, he hears screaming. In all of their minds, they hear screaming. Through the collective recall, they watch as Vitarians run in panic, fleeing a mangled creature with an eye of a melting star.
He is here. The runaway has come. You.
The High Council shouts, pointing to the heretic.
We have shown leniency, but it's clear that the distant one demands your blood.
There is a foot on his head, a blade in an executioner's hand.
If you have any sense,
He tells them.
then you'll give this whole planet the peace of death. This began with you,
They say,
and so it shall end with you.
and the blade comes down. The heretic's head is cleaved from his body, and as his consciousness begins to slip, his final wish is for everything they said to be true. The High Council frantically scans the recall, growing more desperate, more horrified. Any moment now, they think. Any moment, the distant one will intervene. He will deliver them from this monster, this evil made of flesh, and they will all ascend to join him, having proven themselves loyal. After all, the heretic is dead, isn't he? What more is there left for them to do? But the screaming doesn't stop. Their recall is assailed by nonstop suffering, nonstop cries for aid, for mercy, and the High Council watches helplessly while Vitarians are pulled apart, piece by piece. They watch as the runaway poisons their heads. He infiltrates their consciousness, cutting up their thoughts and marrying the agony of their body with the agony of their minds.
Please.
The High Council is pleading. They splay across the floor, raising their hands above them in the way of prayer,
Help us, distant one.
and there's a loud crack. The runaway appears before them. He's levitating in the air, his torso a mangled mess of limbs, his large eye blazing the heat of 1 billion dead stars. His body is coated in blood and skin.
Deliver us from this evil.
The High Council says.
Restore that which is holy.
They plead.
Unmake the pretender.
They beg.
Destroy the false god.
They shriek. And the runaway spreads a dozen crooked arms, tilts his grotesque head, and for the second time in 1,000 years, he takes a breath. An uneven smile slips across his face. He tells them,
I already have.
I'm choking on my vomit. Strong hands roll over me, and I let loose what's left of my dinner onto the deck. I cough. My eyes are bulging. My heart is racing, and it feels like 100 tiny explosions are going off across the surface of my brain.
Human.
Kez says, turning my face to look at him.
Human. Respond.
I grunt. The words come out a jumbled mess, and I stagger to my hands and knees. I'm alive, I say, trying again. Good. Those are real words. Progress,
You have been unconscious for an hour.
War says, lifting my matted hair.
We thought you were slated for expiry. We had prepared the vat to dissolve your corpse, hoping to get what little data we could.
He points to a lowered vat in the ground. It's been emptied of the blue fluid inside all of the others.
Jesus.
I mutter, rubbing my eyes. The environment is blurry, but second by second it's getting clearer.
I'm okay, I think. Just a little woozy.
Did you see it then?
War asks.
How Vitar ends?
Yeah,
I tell him.
but that was a long time ago. Where's the runaway now?
War and Kez are quiet. It's as though they're not certain how to go about answering the question. Like they're worried it'll unearth memories better left buried.
He is still there.
Kez says, eyes downcast.
He is taking his time inflicting pain upon our people. He pulls them apart. Sometimes by their bodies, sometimes by their minds. Often both. When their life gives out, he puts them back together again. Starts over. None can escape.
War nods.
We were off-world when the runaway attacked. Our task had been to monitor a distant area of the edge for his re-emergence. But once we saw what was occurring to the recall, we fled.
Won't he know how to find you?
Oh yes,
War says.
he will know to find us. He will know to find Earth. And once he has had his fill of our people, I suspect he will come back and take out his pain upon humanity. Your genetic signature is what has caused him such grief after all. It is what drove him to find our God.
I shake my head. It's almost too much to imagine. Some all-powerful monster tormenting a population for thousands upon thousands of years, remaking them every time they die.
How?
I mutter.
How do you expect to stop him? After everything I just saw. The Chosen threw a whole solar system at him, caught him in a supernova, and even tried dragging him into a black hole. Nothing worked. How are you going to beat something like that?
We will destroy him the same way that we were destroyed, and the same way that he was born.
Kez says, placing a hand against one of the vats.
Inside of it is a man, and his limbs are dissolved, and so are portions of his cheeks. We will create a virus with accelerated evolution, an evolution more rapid than even the runaways. His immune system will attempt to adapt to it, but it will adapt to his defenses even faster. And then it will consume him and destroy him.
I look at the dozens of vats, the scattered corpses of humans being turned into genetic slush. I look at the tubes extending from the vats and follow them to the console in the center of it all, where I see a large capsule sitting on top. Inside, fluid is bubbling and boiling.
Is that it?
I say, nodding to the capsule.
Is that the virus?
Yes,
War replies, pupils shrinking.
though it is not yet ready. We are hopeful that we can complete its construction before the runaway finishes with our people and comes for your own.
How long?
I ask, my voice quiet.
214 years.
Kez says. I blink, tears forming in my eyes.
200. Good God, that's forever. What if it's not done in time?
Correction.
War says, referring to the readout on his arm.
214 years was our previous assessment. However, with the data we were able to compile from your experience in the recall,
His long fingers tap at the display.
we estimate it may be finished in as little as 33, assuming your genetic deconstruction goes smoothly.
33. It might as well have been 1,000,000 knowing what we were up against.
And what do you call it?
I ask.
Query unclear.
Kez replies.
In this instance, a name serves no purpose. The virus has a function, and it will either succeed or fail in it, and that is all that we are concerned with.
But this virus,
I begin, reaching for the right words.
this is the universe's last chance at saving itself. It's humanity's last chance of surviving. It's your last chance. That's a big freaking deal. It should have a name, shouldn't it?
War's biometric readout flashes.
Cortisol levels are rising. Please calm yourself, human. Otherwise you risk compromising valuable genetic data.
He looks up at me over his display.
Your clone will have no memory of this, so such an emotional response is illogical. As it happens, should you wish to say goodbye to your expiring sister, we will need to begin your deconstruction immediately. The clone will take a day to prepare.
I open my mouth to speak, but I don't know what to say. Tears leak from my eyes. I sniffle, wiping at them as I feel my heart crushed beneath the weight of so much pain. My sister. Hope. She's dying in the hospital, and I won't even get to say goodbye. The best she'll get is some lab-grown copycat. On top of that, there's a mad god rampaging across the universe, and he could show up on our doorstep any second. My knees buckle. I collapse onto the ground, and for the first time since I was very little, I cry my eyes out. I lean my head against the vat of a dead person, and I cry and I cry. I cry for hope. I cry for myself, and I cry for every Vitarian who's dying over and over and over again just to satisfy the twisted whims of the runaway. A hand grips my shoulder. I look up, blinking through the tears clouding my vision. It's Kez,
It is almost time.
he tells me.
Are you ready?
Sure,
I mutter.
we all die someday, right?
He helps me to my feet and leads me toward a lowered, empty vat.
Human.
He says, blinking twice as his pupils pulse with effort.
No. Isaiah Mitchell. It distresses you that we have not named this virus. Why?
Because it's important.
I say, exasperated. I find myself wishing I could be as much of an emotionless husk as the Vitarians. It might make this whole self-sacrifice thing a bit easier.
It's the most important thing ever created. And it's just nameless. It feels wrong. Don't you see that?
No.
He tells me, helping me into the vat. I step into the thick, transparent tank. Liquid begins to pour out of several connected tubes, pooling at my feet. It feels tingly, almost like an anesthetic.
What would you name this virus?
He asks, standing above me. I close my eyes. I think long and hard, happy for a distraction from my own mortality. But try as I might, I can't bring myself to focus on it. I can't make myself think about the virus, the mad god, or the end of the universe. All I can think about is her, my big sister. I think about how much I'm going to miss her, and how I wish I could have had the chance to say goodbye before this nightmare unfolded. I think about playing board games as kids. I think about her making us popcorn and watching Jurassic Park past my bedtime. I think about the two of us swinging on the playground late into the night, and her reading me bedtime stories while our mom and dad were passed out drunk.
Isaiah.
Kez says, snapping me out of my reverie.
The name?
The liquid is around my chest now. I squint up at Kez, my mind already beginning to feel distant, hazy. This is it, the final frontier. I give Kez a smile, and I say the last word I'll ever speak. The place Lisa's taking me is on the far end of the spacecraft. It's deep enough inside that teams haven't gotten around to rigging it with lighting. So we're doing things the old-fashioned way. Right now, Lisa's making shadow puppets with her flashlight.
You have to admit, this one looks like a giraffe.
She says, twisting her fingers in a way that looks nothing like a giraffe.
How far left?
I ask, ignoring her. She sighs.
It's just ahead. What's gotten into you tonight, Mitchell? What's that supposed to mean?
I say, frowning.
I mean, it's usually me that's all business. You're the asshole who everything slips off of like cellophane, but now you're all brooding and serious.
She shines the light in my eyes, and I stumble backward.
Jesus, quit it, will you? Just needed to see your eyes.
She laughs, turning the light forward again.
Had to make sure the aliens hadn't possessed you. Give me a break. A break? You only just got to work.
She stops suddenly, jerks her head to the side. Her flashlight illuminates a piece of paper hanging above the top of an entryway, and the paper reads D34.
This is us,
She says.
after you.
I step inside. The room is dark, but to my right, in the far corner, is a scatter of lights and a small crew of people. They're buzzing around a field of vats. My breath catches in my chest. The vats are filled with blue liquid. They're filled with floating human corpses.
It's real.
I mutter.
Jesus, it's all real. No shit.
Lisa says, pushing past me.
Major Luca?
She calls out. A woman comes forward in a white lab coat, and on her uniform is a patch that reads Luca.
Agents?
She says, pulling down her mask.
Good to see you. The bodies are just this way.
She leads us through the maze of vats. There are people in lab attire standing above the tanks, dipping sticks inside to grab DNA samples. Others are draining the fluid with small portable pumps. This is it. This is the place I go every time I fall asleep.
Here they are.
Lucas says. She points at a gray tarp, and I bend down and lift it up. Beneath are two bodies, both large, both dead. They have scaled skin, long teeth, serrated claws and even tails. Once I would have said they looked like monsters. Now I think they look like old friends. Their names are Kez and War. Lisa whistles, circling them.
Scary bastards, huh? Good thing they weren't alive and kicking when we got inside. Probably would have gone all xenomorph on our asses.
I stare at the dead duo. How? How did they let this happen? They were Vitarians, the most advanced species in the history of the universe. How did they get shot down by something as archaic as an F-35?
Did the pilot give a report?
I ask. Lisa looks up, lifts an eyebrow.
You're looking at the first real, flesh and blood aliens that anybody's ever seen, and you're asking about fucking paperwork?
She rolls her eyes.
Mitchell, I'm telling you, you're losing it. The report,
I say, trying to keep my voice steady.
What did the pilot see? Why'd they fire on the UAP?
She sighs, long and hard.
All right, let's get this over with. According to the report, the pilot picked up something weird on radar. Flew over to investigate. Once he gets there, he sees this giant aircraft that's flickering in and out of existence. Like 1 second it's there, the next it's gone kind of thing. Real strange. The pilot thinks maybe this is some kind of unknown Chinese aircraft and reports it in. But before he can finish the report, the UAP fires something into the sky. Fire something?
I say, blinking.
Like a weapon?
She shrugs.
That's what the pilot thought. He figured it might be some kind of preemptive nuclear strike, and so he returned fire on it, launched everything he had. And that was it? What did they fire? No idea, she says. NASA recorded it leaving our atmosphere, and the thing kept picking up speed until it cleared our solar system entirely. They lost track of it an hour ago.
I shake my head. Pieces begin to fall together, and I wonder if maybe whatever it was the Vitarians fired required such immense power that they had to divert everything towards its launch. All cloaking functions, all shielding functions. That's the only thing that made any sense to me. There was no way an F-35 could match them otherwise.
That's not all, ma'am,
Major Lucas says. Her voice is slow, almost nervous.
After I radioed you about the bodies, my team found something else. We think it might have been the payload. The one the aliens launched just before the jet took them down. Show me,
I say, shoving past Lisa.
Now!
The Major hurries past rows of vats, and I follow. The whole time, I'm trying to ignore the twisting horror in my gut, the creeping dread that my nightmares were more real than I ever was. I see the bodies dissolving in the blue fluid, and I wonder how many other humans are clones. I wonder if the original Isaiah felt any pain when he died. I wonder if he'd hate me now.
It's here,
Lucas says, stopping in front of a large metallic console. Yet another relic of my memories. She points to an empty pedestal on top, and in the center of the pedestal is a hole, some kind of chute.
We think the payload they fired was sitting on here,
she tells me. Her eyes move across the rows of vats with dozens of dead humans, and her lips curl in disgust.
Best as we can tell, we think they might have been using our DNA to create some kind of bioweapon. I think that's what they fired tonight. A bioweapon?
Lisa says, catching up.
Why? Were they trying to wipe us out and just missed? Maybe,
Lucas says.
Or maybe it's like an ICBM, except instead of breaching our atmosphere, it's breaching our solar system.
Lisa says something in response. Luca replies. They go back and forth. At some point, I think Lisa might be talking to me, but my mind is a million miles away. I take a step toward the metal console, toward the empty pedestal. This is where it was. The virus that War and Kez had been building to destroy the runaway. Hang on, there's something underneath it. A label. It might be the only label in this entire ship, but it's covered by dust and made faint by decades of wear. Lisa grabs my arm.
Earth to Mitchell?
I mutter something in response, but I can't tell you what it is. Words. Just words. Just like the word sitting beneath the pedestal. It's a word that brings back memories, but not memories of floating corpses or exploding stars or aliens and mad gods. No, this is a word that brings back memories of a hospital room. White. Sterile. Inside of it, a girl is lying in a bed, and her skin is pale and thin. She's having trouble breathing. Tubes are pouring into her throat, doing their best to keep her alive. But she doesn't have long. This girl is dying, and she's the most important thing to me in the entire world.
Chin up,
She's telling me, and her frail hand rests against my own. She's smiling. She's 17 years old, hardly even had a chance to live, and she's smiling because she knows that's what I need to see.
everything will be okay.
She says.
You'll see.
But I think about her mom and dad. I think about how right now they're passed out on the couch, and how maybe if I'm lucky, they'll drink themselves to death before I get home. I think about the bruises up and down my arms. I think about the moment my guardian angel intervened and pulled my dad off of me, just in time for him to shove her backwards down the stairs. I think about the sound her body made as it hit the floor, how still she was. And now, I'm here, and she's smiling at me, and she's telling me that everything is going to be okay, even though I know that it isn't. I know nothing will ever be okay again.
I don't want you to go,
I tell her, and I squeeze her hand as gently as I can. Tears are pouring from my eyes.
please.
And I know it's selfish. I know it's pointless. I know that my older sister is dying whether I like it or not, and that putting this on her at the very end is cruel. But I'm a kid. I know if I don't try, I'll always wonder if it might have worked. If maybe I had just asked, she might have stayed. The machine that's beeping in tune with her heart starts to slow. She leans forward and presses her forehead to mine.
I have to.
She whispers.
But don't think for a second I won't be watching over you.
I blink back tears.
Promise?
Sure.
She tells me, pulling me into a hug.
That's what big sisters are for, right?
We hold each other like that until the beeping stops.
I'm talking to you!
Lisa snaps.
Huh? Fantastic! You're still alive!
Lisa looks panicked. Her hair is a mess, and she's taking another swig of her flask.
What's wrong?
I ask. She's wiping her lips and putting the flask back into her jacket.
Look,
She says.
if this thing really is a bioweapon, then we've got to get information on it. And fast. Like Lucas said, just because we've lost track of it doesn't mean it's not going to loop back around for us.
She pulls out a crudely printed map and starts tapping at it with a finger.
Here, I'll organize a search through Alpha to Delta corridors, and you handle Echo through Hotel. Look for records, data, anything you can find. Got it? Right.
I mutter.
I'm on it. Great.
She starts fast walking away, her hands balled into fists.
I'm fucked.
She's muttering over and over.
There's a fucking bioweapon out there, and I don't know the first thing about it. I'm fucked.
I look back to the console, to the empty pedestal where the virus once sat, and I think to myself that what Lisa's saying isn't quite true. We do know something about this. My fingers brush the dust from beneath the pedestal, revealing the worn label. On it is a single word, scratched by a Vitarian claw 30 years ago. It's a name. A virus like this shouldn't need a name. Kez told me as much. But if it had one, well, I think I would have named it after my guardian angel. I think I would have called it Hope. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy these stories, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and check out some more of my episodes here.